Yes. Thank you, Gordon. Welcome to First Unitarian. Thank you, Gordon Porth, our guest pianist for today. That was just amazing. We're going to start today with some singing. Please rise as you're willing and able and join us in song. We're going to sing 2 short hymns to get us all into our bodies and to be together. The first one is Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. Wonderful. Don't sit down yet. We're going to do another one. Building bridges. This is a Quaker tune. We're going to sing it twice through. No round, just unison. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Thank you. Please be seated.
All right. No trick this time. Woo. Can you all hear me?
No.
All right. Hi, friends. Will you? Ooh, all right. Okay. We have arrived in body and in voice. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. Here, our mission is through spiritual connection in community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. We gather here on this land, in this place, and we acknowledge with respect that we gather on the ancestral and contemporary land of the Haudenosaunee peoples. If you don't know what that means, or you're looking to deepen your relationship with the indigenous people of this land, I invite you on Friday to attend the 228th annual commemoration of the Canandaigua Treaty. It is meant to celebrate peace and friendship between the Haudenosaunee Nation, 6 nations, and what was then a very young United States, emerging as its own nation. So that's down in Canandaigua, and it's this Friday. You can find out more about it on the Gondondigan website. And if you are new or newish here to First Unitarian, I invite you to stop by the welcome desk or let us know online so we can help get you connected. When we talk about that, that's not something we take lightly here. When we talk about connection, you'll soon find out when we finish here in about 45, 50 minutes, we will then go into smaller groups and try to get to know each other. We'll go out through this door, get coffee, and then divide up into smaller groups. Connection matters not only in your own life to cure the contemporary illness of loneliness and isolation, but also because, as you'll learn later, the connection between us and our ability to weave community again and again is part of what helps us build a better world. It's about what helps us keep our democracy strong. We're gearing up toward Election Day, and for Unitarian Universalists, this is almost a high holy day of sorts. But like other kinds of family gatherings, we wonder who we're going to get in a fight with, and it raises a lot of anxiety. Yeah. Why don't we take a deep breath? And together, if you're online, I'll invite you to light a chalice or a candle. And here in the sanctuary, Carl Olson, who's a member of our board of trustees, he's going to light our chalice here. Together, we're going to say the words shared by those of us here in the sanctuary, as well as our children, to begin our time of worship. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift.
Good morning. I've got a story to share with you, and this time I almost killed myself and my wife. I should have known better. My wife and I own a travel trailer, and we travel the country and camp about 3 months out of the year. And this year in Colorado, our trailer suffered a wheel bearing failure. We were camping up in Colorado National Monument. In fact, we had just driven the long, windy road that has switchbacks and tunnels and steep drop-offs, and before we got to our campsite. And when we got to the campsite, we saw the rear wheel of the camper, the trailer, was pitched at an angle. That's not good. It should be straight up and down. And so we had to have our trailer put on a flatbed tractor trailer and driven down from the National Monument down all the way to Grand Junction to have it repaired. And in fact, when they backed our Jeep and trailer off of the flatbed, the wheel almost came off. So, I'm an engineer. And in fact, I was a maintenance engineer for the Eastman Kodak Company early in my career, responsible for maintaining large pieces of manufacturing equipment. So I should have known better, and I failed to maintain our wheel bearings. Well, as you can see, we didn't die, but that wheel could have come off while we were going up that long, windy road up into Colorado National. Was the universe really just being nice to us? Was this divine intervention? Was this, something where we had done enough good to be saved? Isn't that why we come to church? Ponder these deep questions. And here is a place where we can find opportunities to do good for others, where we can put enough on the good side of the ledger so that when bad things happen, it all kind of balances out. Now, I think Reverend Cherry's over there thinking, that's not how it works. But she also might be saying, well, if that's what it takes to get you to come to church every week and to be a lay worship associate, well, I'm okay with that. So for whatever reason you come to church, here you will find a place where you can share life's ups and downs, a place where you can do good for others, and a place of solace sometimes in a more dangerous world. And don't forget, wheel bearings need love too. Give them grease whenever they need it. And we enter now into our time of greeting. For those of you online, I welcome you or invite you to type into the chat wherever you are joining us from. And here in the sanctuary, you can rise if you're willing and able and greet your neighbor in our house of worship. You may now greet your neighbor.
Oh, Gordon, that was so beautiful. I see that I'm gonna have to switch up the primal scream we were all gonna do. Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in a body prayer. It's one we've done before together, and it may be new to some of you, but it's one that helps me stay grounded in my body. We have so many beautiful words in Unitarian Universalism, so much beautiful music to listen to, and yet our spirits live in our bodies, so it's good to invite that in. So I invite you to lift your hands up toward the ceiling, toward this curious sky that we have here in our sanctuary. And open yourself up to the gifts that have been given to us. Turn your palms down to the ground. Scoop up the harvest that you'll need here in our harvest season and press it into your heart. Everything that you might need. And open yourself to the world, just as you are. Raise your hands up toward the sky. And come down, bringing your palms toward the ground, scooping up just enough, pressing just enough into you, and opening yourself up just enough, just as you are. Returning to center, we'll do that again silently. You may now be seated.
Our reading this morning is from the Unitarian Universalist Pocket Guide. Our replay is There Is No Easier Way by Elizabeth Wynne. I once saw a little sign carved in wood that read, "There is only the hard way." Many of us have been harmed by theology that told us that suffering was a sacrifice that would bring us closer to God. Many of us were told that our suffering would redeem us, even when we knew that actual redemption would have been to be free from the suffering to begin with. Many of us are only here because of the sacrifices of others. So much of what is possible to carve out in this world requires some giving up, some letting go, some sacrifice. That is the truth of that little wooden sign. There is no easy way. There is only the hard way. In particular, the work of justice often asks us to do impossible, hard, terrifying things. There is no easier way. There is only this one hard way. Folks with more privilege sometimes get caught up here. If it's hard, maybe we're doing it wrong. We are lulled by our experiences of choosing between a hard choice and an easier one. Folks with less privilege know that many of our choices are between a horrific choice and a horrific choice. We learn to live with that and keep going. Many of us want to do the right thing, the just thing, the generous thing, and also not have to do anything at all. We want to share our opinions, but not actually donate our evenings or our weekends, or doing the dishes while we're on the conference call, to get to understand the work enough to be able to offer meaningful thoughts. We want people to trust us and let us shape the vision, but not actually risk inviting folks to tea or dinner or beers or church to build a relationship that endures and carries us forward. We may want to post a cute meme without actually making the phone call to the city councilor or state representative. We want to be part of that powerful, courageous, game-changing, direct action without long past midnight planning meetings, the messy decision-making, the frayed relationships, the constant wondering if this is even worth it. We want to talk about being bound together in interdependence, but do not actually want to give our guest room to a stranger, give a paycheck to someone we've never met, or turn our schedule inside out to do what needs to be done. The word sacrifice might be too much mess for some of us, too tainted by oppression and coercion. What matters more is that we are willing to live our lives in the shape of what is being asked, not that we are asked to do what will fit into the shape of our lives.
Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. We continue with the words of the Reverend Elizabeth Wynne. Spirit, help me to look at sacrifice. I know what a heavy, dangerous thing. We know that it is harm to diminish ourselves, that there is no justice in making ourselves little. And still, we know this to be true. Someone sacrificed for us. A grandparent went without. A parent crossed a border. A sibling let go of a dream. She worked a second job. They gave us theirs. He rarely rested. They should not have had to, Spirit, I know this and I pray this, but they did. Some of us were taught that we can have every good thing and not give up anything. When we fight for each other as family, sometimes we find a better way, a sacrifice that we might choose. A paycheck, an afternoon, a year of paychecks, a gift in the name of life, freely given. No martyrs, no saviors. And if we have a lot, we may be asked to give it. Some of us can give more because we have it. Privacy, rest, mobility, money, time, attention. Sometimes we give because if we did not, we would sacrifice something else. Our heart, our humanity, our faith, our family. May we treat one another as family, offering when it is ours to give and taking freely when it is ours to take. On our way to creating a world that believes that abundance is a birthright for every body. May it be so. May it be so. Here in community, we are invited to bring whatever it is that is on our hearts and lay it on the altar of community and spirit. Honoring the complexities of life, I invite you to bring to mind whatever grief or growth or gratitude is alive within you. Online, you're invited to share in the chat, and here in the sanctuary, you're invited to light a candle, or if you'd like an usher to bring one to you, to raise your hand. I invite you now to share in this ritual of community care and witness to one another's hearts. for all brought to our community altar and all left unspoken and unlit. We pray. May all here and those brought to mind be held by a love that will not let us go. Amen and blessed be.
Each week, members and friends generously contribute to our offering, which helps to sustain and grow our community. This collection supports the work and witness of our church, and each week we give half of that collection to a partner organization helping those in need and working to create a more just and loving world. This week we are sharing the plate collection with the Susan B. Anthony House. The National Susan B. Anthony Museum and House interprets the great reformer's vision and story, preserves and shares her national historic landmark home and headquarters, collects and exhibits artifacts related to her life and works, and offers tours and interpretive programs to inspire and challenge individuals to make a positive difference. You can donate online at rochesterunitarian.org/donate or by Venmo or Simple Church. Our offering will now be received with gratitude.
Care for this house.
150 years ago, an ancestor of this congregation was arrested for voting, for registering to vote, bringing her friends, and then casting a vote. Each and every year we celebrate the memory tree, as we did last week. Time is funny. I hang a leaf for Susan B. Anthony and for Mary Anthony, her sister, both members of this congregation. I hang a leaf because though she is a complicated historical figure, we hang leaves for those who came before us. And 150 years ago, she was arrested for voting, not trying to vote, but for actually casting a vote, for with her strong personality, holding fast, some might say bullying, election officials to allow her to register, both her and her friends. She was later tried and convicted and fined, but she refused to pay it. She didn't think she had broken the law. And instead, she went on a speaking tour describing this great state as not a republic, an odious aristocracy, a hateful oligarchy. Sometimes that sounds like American democracy, but she would not be deterred. At the risk of both idolatry and heresy, Mother Susan, I must confess that I often want to give up on electoral politics. It feels generational. There's hardly anyone younger than me who thinks that it will help, because it's hard to imagine that it has. We look around and think, how did we get here? Wasn't it supposed to be better? What were we doing? What were you all doing? An odious aristocracy, a hateful oligarchy. These words resonate. And democracy, especially in this capitalist hellscape, feels maybe like it's not quite working. But then this poem floats across my desk by Kyle Tran Mira, Voting as Fire Extinguisher. When the haunted house catches fire, a moment of indecision. The house was, after all, built on bones and blood and bad intentions. Everyone who enters the house feels that overwhelming dread, the evil that perhaps only fire can purge. And I'll pause for a moment in the poem to say, I know that not everybody in this room feels that way, but many of us do. Many of us have looked around at both the history and the present and said, why bother? So we return to Kyle's words. It's tempting to just let it burn. But then I remember there are children inside. Yes, there are. Not a month goes by here in Rochester where I don't meet someone either in our congregation or in the wider community who has moved here as a migrant or refugee from some other place. Sometimes, usually, it's climate related. Sometimes, usually, it's also economic related. Housing became impossible. My neighbor's house burned down, and I didn't want to be next. But recently, these stories have shifted to include political migrants. Not just those like my neighbor who've moved here from Honduras, where they could not find safety as a trans woman, but also to American-born citizens, those who have moved from places like Ohio or Pennsylvania, those who have moved just a couple hundred miles away, but who've gotten tired, who've looked around and said, enough is enough, and I can't risk it anymore. Those who have said, I don't know what will happen to my trans child here. I don't know what will happen to my family. Our same-sex marriage should be safe, but it might not be. I don't want this question hanging over our house anymore. And so they wash up on our shores here on the North Coast, here in Rochester. And because there are children inside the house, they seek safety. American democracy in this capitalist hellscape has become an increasingly depressing exercise, and yet not all is lost. It never is. Many of the voices around me, skeptical of electoral politics, skeptical of the fundraising texts that we get day in and day out, skeptical that those who seek our votes will continue to fight for our safety and well-being, know that no one election can do everything, nor will all be lost. After the 2016 election, many of us worried about our families, about our children, about our marriages, about our neighbors, about our safety. And journalists and academics and preachers and ordinary people looked around and thought about how we might keep each other safe, how we might ensure each other's well-being. Academic Sarah Kendzior wrote a powerful essay at that time based on her study of former Soviet colonies about what we might do to counter authoritarianism here in the US. And her article, I'll summarize here. She invited us to write down what you value. Write down what standards you hold for yourself and for others. Write about your dreams for the future and your hopes for your children. Write about the struggle of your ancestors and how the hardship they overcame shaped the person you are today. You still have your freedom, so use it. She wrote about groups organizing for resistance and subsistence. She wrote about how we are not alone in any of this, not in our fear, but also not in our courage and in our action. In difficult times, you need to be your own light, but you need to also to reflect the light around you, reflect the courage and the bravery and the action. One cannot accept brutality and cruelty as normal, especially when it is sanctioned. We must protect the vulnerable. We must encourage the afraid. And if you are brave, if there's even a tiny seed of courage within you, you must use it. And if you cannot be brave because it is so often hard to be brave, you must be kind. And most of all, you can never lose sight of who you are and what you value. And so if you find yourself doing something questionable or wrong in the coming years, you need to go back and find that essay and think about who you are and read it and ask that version of yourself if you would have done the same thing that you're doing now. And if the answer is no, then don't do it. That was the gist of her essay 6 years ago. 6 years ago, so many of us were afraid, and many of those fears were well-founded, though it has not been the rapid apocalypse that so many worried about. And yet still, our democratic freedoms and civil rights are perpetually being threatened. And so better late than never. If you didn't write this essay 6 years ago, I invite you now to turn to a neighbor or write into the chat in a moment one thing that you value. Take a moment to think of it and then share it with the person around you. One thing that matters most to you. And if you haven't switched, please do so. All right, I'm going to invite you back. There is plenty to talk about because there is plenty that you hold in your heart, plenty that you value, plenty that you do not want to lose hold of. This is a good thing.
All right.
We haven't lost our faith,
No, the talk
lost
goes
our
from 2
family,
to 3:30.
lost our humanity, lost our wholeness. It's a deeply serious topic, and the last 6 years have seen. That one was totally me. I got too excited because I'm going to move. The last 6 years have seen an emboldening of open white nationalism, open white supremacy. And this is a serious topic, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I want to share a story of my first encounter with white nationalism here in Rochester. My first encounter in 3D. In 2D, it was seeing stickers recruiting people to join the Proud Boys in Pittsford and Penfield. And I mentioned it then during a sermon, and many of you afterwards told me that's not happening here. It is. I think we are beyond the point of arguing. But it was it wasn't 6 years ago, it was 3 years ago, but it's been a long time. It was 3 years ago, and I was 25 years younger then, and naive and stupid, and so I wanted to see what white nationalism looked like for myself. I'd heard rumors while I was seeking a house that there was a place just up the road from us. It doesn't advertise itself as a place for white nationalists. It instead has a totally different purpose. But a little deeper into their Instagram account, it's not terribly hidden. And I didn't want to go by myself, and again, I was younger and much more stupid. And so I called up the other Unitarian Universalist minister in town, and the two of us drove in our Priuses to this establishment and waltzed right in to ask some questions, friendly questions, to build division across bridges. At the time, Reverend Lane May Reed of the Universalist congregation had one of those neo-Nazi haircuts. Don't tell them I said so. But I thought it might help. And indeed it did, but I didn't actually need that because I forgot that I'm half white, but I'm also half Asian, and they weren't going to talk to me, they were going to talk to them. And so the two of us walk in, and I ask them what they're all about, and I take a look at the Hitler Youth poster on the wall, and they say they're just a regular place, just a place to build community and get fit. Anybody can come here. The Jolly Green Giant could come here. It doesn't matter if you're blue or green. You could come here, they say to Reverend Lane May Reed, and not to me, who they've yet to make eye contact with. You can come here if you're blue or green is a curious response to, what do you do here? It's a white nationalist front with well-documented connections to other white supremacist organizations on the West Coast and in the South, as well as Canada. It's a white supremacist organization that also has connections to the Webster School District and Penfield. It's a white supremacist organization that openly operates just a couple of miles from here. I was 25 years younger and much more stupid then. The two of us booked it out of there, but this place persists. Some anti-fascists from Washington were able to get them out of the Webster School District. And some budding anti-fascists here in the Rochester area helped lead the movement of a budding Christian nationalist conference out of the Armory down to Batavia. But white supremacy in an open, aggressive, and assertive front is alive and well here in Rochester. I was younger and much more stupid then, and now I am tired but not done. Tired and disillusioned with electoral politics, but enough is enough, and we are not done. 6 years ago, after the election of our former president, I sat on the subway and had the only panic attack of my entire life because I wondered if the people around me would protect me. I didn't particularly have anything to fear, except I've been spit at here in Rochester for being Asian. And, well, despite the boring domesticity of my same-sex marriage, that still seems to be a controversial subject in Fairport, Penfield, Spencerport, Webster school districts. If you go to any of these school board meetings, you'll hear about that. And I looked around and suddenly the floor fell from under me. And because New York City is a weird and magical place, somebody I knew came and sat down next to me and held my hand and said, "Hey, I think you're having a panic attack." There are 12 million people on any given day in New York City. And someone I knew came and sat down next to me and held my hand and said, "Hey, you're not alone." In the months that followed, thousands of people flooded JFK Airport to stop the so-called Muslim ban. In the years that followed, I got calls every week from other clergy saying, "Hey, in our state, this isn't possible anymore. but in your state it is. Can you help? In the years that followed, I reached out to people in this congregation, and you opened your homes, you gave rides, you gave money, you fed people. In the years that followed and in the days leading up to this, many of you reached out when you needed help. You took a risk when it wasn't comfortable. Over the last 6 years, whether or not we have had this essay written, and I recommend you take Sarah's words and go back and write down what you value, because the creeping authoritarianism in our country has not faded back. But in the 6 years since, people have risen again and again to live out of our deepest values, to raise each other up and to reflect the light that we see. There are children inside of this congregation who vote now for our greater good, spiritual practice. In December, we take 2 of 3 organizations, the 2 that our children have voted for, and collectively we sacrifice to say that together we might do something bigger than any of us can do alone. There are children in the houses of those who have moved here and those who have not yet moved here, but have decided to stay and build community and resist wherever it is that they are. There are children inside, and we have only ourselves, not only those in the room, but whatever seed of courage and bravery and kindness we might muster and then reflect back and encourage in others. Voting is just the beginning, and I encourage you to vote early today, if at all possible, so that on Tuesday you might give rides, you might call up friends, call up strangers, and deliver food to your neighbor's door, because a meal might make getting the vote out easier. Voting is just the beginning, but here in this place of refuge, where others come because they know it is a place of sanctuary, a place of courage and love, we are invited to organize, to build community, to get to know one another, to take risks, to be vulnerable, to know that interdependence means not only pretty words, but also opening up our homes, sharing meals, inviting that person out for tea or dinner or beer or a Zoom call or whatever it takes to build that relationship. Here in community, we know that sacrifice and courage are possible, if inconvenient. Convenience and comfort are not the values I write in my essay. Convenience and comfort are not the spiritual values of this community. I want to close with a story that you all may know well, and I always need a reminder of. Stanley Milgram, a researcher at Yale after World War II, wondered how so many regular people might have been convinced to do unthinkably horrible things. How might so many ordinary Germans have been convinced to be complicit in the lives and deaths of Jewish people, of sexual minorities, and ethnic minorities? And so this experiment had one person asked to push a button that might shock someone else on the other side of the window. That wasn't actually ever happening, but the screams suggested it was real. This experiment was repeated again and again, and is controversial and has fallen out of favor because the psychological trauma of subjecting students to this experiment is real. And yet, in repeated studies, the single thing that made the biggest difference in whether or not people were willing to push that button and punish or do violence or harm to their fellow human was not whether they had dinner with their parents every night, was not whether or not they voted Democrat or Republican, was not whether or not they were well hydrated, but was the presence of another person, hesitant, just a single glimmer, a flicker of hesitation to suggest that perhaps that course of action would not be the right one. There is so much about what is right and what is wrong that lulls us into thinking that we may know without a doubt at all times how to do good and not do harm to our fellow humans. But life and history suggests otherwise. We need reminders and we need help. And so we write the essay, and may we be that moment of hesitation, that hand slipping into one another's in a moment of fear. Bearers of hope, keepers of courage, and fire extinguishers. There are children in the house. Be brave, risk inconvenience, vote at the very minimum, and love deeply. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and sing with us our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
For the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, when our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with
We are a people of memory, resistance, and hope. Here in this sanctuary, in this place of refuge, our ability to be powerful and impactful in a world of deeper justice begins with relationship. So I invite you to go out that door, grab a cup of coffee, join one of the connection groups, or meet someone new. Practice the skills you will need to meet your neighbors. Let this place be a place of practice. May it help us to transform ourselves and the world, beginning with our neighbors. Go in peace, go in love. Amen. We're not going to extinguish the chalice this week. I know that's my fault, but we're not going to do it. I'm just going to make you go to connection. It's the fire of commitment. I'm going to extinguish it at 11:45 when church is actually over.